Hey, Dusty.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So we're on the air right now, and we're going to go ahead and get started. If that's all right. We have a couple of just kind of standard questions, sort of what we ask everybody, but we also have some questions that are basically based on your career. So my first question is, growing up, were you a wrestling fan, and if so, who were some of your favorites?
Oh, yeah, growing up, definitely. Favorites? Funk. Most funks, more Terry than Dory. Bastine, Murdoch, Danny Hodge. Those are pretty much the guys I grew up with. Actually, enjoying and wanting to see what they were up to next, that sort of thing.
So you're a real fan of the Texas area growing up?
Well, I'm Texan.
Yeah.
I was in a place where I had one of the earliest forms of cable, and on a weekend I could see the Wichita Falls tape, Dallas tape, and the Amarillo tape in the same weekend.
Oh, wow. Now,
yeah, so that's pretty good for a wrestling fan.
Yeah,
Pretty
definitely.
good for a kid.
Now, was being a professional wrestler, was that your first career choice?
Was that what?
Was wrestling your first career choice?
No, I didn't know exactly what I did. If I had been able to live the childhood dreams, I'd have been a baseball player. But as far as actual choice careers, that sort of thing, who knows what direction anything's going to take you. I really hadn't gotten old enough and done enough to start having all those kinds of plans and schemes and all that that goes on.
So growing up, as a child, you were a big baseball fan. That was kind of what you sort of wanted to do.
I played baseball. I was a fair to middling baseball player. I was probably not as good as I'd like to think I was, but I was better than a lot of the others around me. And had I been given opportunities to work with some guys that really knew what they were doing, and when it comes to coaching and so on, who knows? I may have reached the limits sooner than I wanted to, but there was a little potential there. Yeah, I wanted to give it a try.
Right. And I guess you were saying you grew up, one of the guys you really enjoyed watching was Dick Murdoch, and you later got to work with him, so we'll hit on that in a little bit.
It ended up being kind of like, it ended up being kind of like a surrogate dad to me the last 10, 12 years of my life.
Okay. Now, at the time where you were in training, the training in wrestling was a lot different than it is today. Can you kind of describe a little bit what your training is like?
Well, in those days, you didn't show up with money in your pocket and a payment plan, and you too can be a wrestler. We don't care if you're 5'1" or 600 pounds. It was none of that. There was no cookie cutter training schools with diplomas and all that other. You showed if you could find somebody that would work with you, they would stretch you, see what you could do as far as legitimate wrestling. Whether they were any good or not, they knew a little more than you did, usually, unless you came out of the amateurs. Just out of self-defense, it's going back, you're talking like 82 for me when I started training. Actually, before that time, 80, 81. The older guys, they reached back into the 50s, which you still had a fair amount of guys that could handle themselves. So self-defense, just knowing some. And they would test you on that. And then you were taking bumps on mats on the floors and switching in on some holes, that sort of thing. And it was nothing like it is today. It was they actually tried to teach you something instead of, 2 weeks later we got you doing high spots and this is going to be your gimmick and we're going to do this, we can do that. Nothing like that. It was if you make it. Now you're going to do jobs, and now you're going to, if you're lucky, get to do jobs and learn how to do some work now.
Yeah, and I know in those days a lot of times people would be toiling around the territories for years before a lot of people really knew much about them. One of your first... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was just the way it was. As long as you could make a living doing what you wanted to do, it was really difficult to complain about staying busy and making a living. You may have wanted to make more because of the higher the card, obviously. But like anything else, there was, taking orders, and there was clicks and so forth and so on. So sometimes it can take a little while.
Right. Sometimes I think that the guys today don't have the same appreciation for it as guys from your era because they didn't spend that time. You have certain guys who go through contests and all this and all those schools that they don't have that 5 to 10 years of just sort of being in a territory that they did in your era.
Well, there's no territory to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no territory to go to. There's no place to learn. Schools are the worst thing about the wrestle business, and they spit out guys. I said it before, I say it again. This is the only industry I've ever seen that, even though we know we have too many parts, they still keep spitting the parts out.
Now we have a caller on the line.
I say we, that's the business, the wrestling industry can't make money trying to sell tickets, so they make money out selling spots in the wrestling schools. That's where the money's being made. There is no business left. So as far as the guys don't have an opportunity, no, they don't. They're not ever coming back, unfortunately.
Yeah. Now we have a caller on the line from the area code 405, so I'm going to go ahead and put them on. Hello, caller from 405 on the air.
Okay.
Hello, caller, are you there? Just not. All right. Now, my next question is a perfect segue because we're talking about the territories, and really one of your first breaks was working for Joe Blanchard in Southwest Championship Wrestling. Do you have any memories of working for Joe?
Joe was okay. Looking back on what I know now, Joe was an outlaw, which is probably part of the reason I liked him then. I didn't realize why I liked him. But Joe was also one of the more fair guys. We didn't ever get rich in a territory like this in San Antonio, where it's South Texas. There was not a wrestling traditional area, but we were busy, and he paid about as fair as anybody did, considering what he had to pay with, and the size of the towns, the population, and the general population of the whole area. Corpus, San Antonio, Austin, that sort of thing. Joe was one of those, if you worked hard, he rewarded you. He kept you busy. He knew what he could help you find work when he was trying to move on, that sort of thing. He was one of the good ones.
Now, shortly after you left Southwest Championship Wrestling, you went to Memphis, and you're actually part of the first team known as the Hollywood Blondes, teaming with Ken Timms, and that was under Jerry Jarrett. Do you have any memories of Jerry Jarrett?
Well, I don't think anybody could go to that place and not be scarred, good or bad. The territory itself is great, as far as the wrestling fans and the way they enjoy the wrestling and react to the wrestling, and like having their wrestling for in the town. Just wrestling fans, like what we always the younger guys see him on YouTube, jumping up and down, hitting the ring. That's what you had there. As far as dealing with Lawler and Jarrett himself wasn't too bad to deal with. Lawler was a pain in the ass. I just be blunt about it. He was a pain in the ass to deal with. And in some ways he had reason. He had carried that, when I was 84, he had carried, for the most part of 10 years, he'd carried that territory. Whatever money it made was pretty much due to him in some fashion or form. And he knew it, and you paid for it.
We're actually going to have Jerry on the show in a couple of weeks, so see if he has anything to say about that. Now we're going to try, I guess, our caller's back on the line, so we're going to see if we can get them through. So, hello, caller, are you there? Caller from the 405, can you hear me? Okay. Maybe their phone's on me now, but I don't know. We'll try back there in a little bit. Now, you worked for Joe Savoldi in ICW, where you feuded with Ox Baker. What was Ox like in the ring? I've always heard he's kind of stiff.
No, I never actually worked against Ox. Anything I ever did as far as in and around with Ox, somehow or another, I was like the young kid that he conned into doing his dirty work. And I was the one who was, jumping in there and taking an ass whipping while he was doing whatever his angle was with, Idol or whoever it might have been at the time. So, but, Ox is just a big old snug. You could tell he was snug. Standing next to the ring watching him. There's no doubt about that. Okay.
Now, when you were in Florida, you also worked with the Guerreros. How were they in the ring? And do you have any special fond memories of them?
They're tremendous. That whole family's just tremendous workers. There's just no way around it. I mean, it shows every time you see them in the ring. There's a lot of bad workers out in the bunch. I mean, a guy like Hector, he actually gets a bad rap sometimes for some of the gimmicks he's been saddled with, just trying to make sure he paid the bills and stayed busy. But Hector was probably one of the most underappreciated guys around.
I always thought it was uncanny how Hector and Eddie Guerrero looked almost identical.
Yeah, they did. And they're just great workers. I mean, you can't say enough about their talent. Well, I can't,
No, definitely.
I don't know how to say anything beyond that. They were just that great.
Now, also, in the early part of your career, you teamed with Tim Horner a lot. Do you have any memories of working with Tim? I think a lot of the more modern fans know him as an enhancement talent from WCW.
Tim was a good guy. Another one that, I couldn't tell you exactly what kept him from going further, but he could have done so much more. Just for whatever reason, it didn't happen.
Okay, you also at one point worked for Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico. We've got a lot of people on over the months who've worked with Carlos, and there's a lot of different opinions of him and working in Puerto Rico. How was your experience down there?
That's another place that the territory itself, as far as the travel, the towns, the fans, whatever, it's great. The office is what runs it. You got good cop, bad cop going on here in Jamaica. I don't even know if Jamaica's still part of the office anymore, but when I would be in and out, he was half owner, and he was the front guy for everything that would go down, and he was the one that would take all the blame for the boys getting mistreated, and Carlos would just smile at you, I'll check with Jamaica and see what's going on, and nothing ever got done. It's one of those places that, once again, they agreed, kill the goose and lay the golden egg, so to speak.
Yeah, a lot of guys like Ric Flair said that there was times there where they weren't sure if they'd get out of the arena with their lives. Did you ever experience anything like that?
The last time, I don't know if it was that drastic. Hindsight's always different than the moment. But I had some serious words with Jamaica in the locker room the last night I was there. He shorted me on my anniversary payday. He put his finger in my face. I retaliated. I got home on the next flight home, literally the next flight home, next morning. Because I knew they weren't above doing something to the boys. Other than that, no, I never worried about that with the office itself. But I knew then, at that point, that I had better look out after myself because nobody else was going to.
And you also went and worked for World Class Championship Wrestling. Now, I'm sure for a guy like you growing up in Texas, that was like the mecca, working for Fritz Von Erich. What were your thoughts on the Von Erich family as a whole? Did the boys ever kind of fit the stereotype that they've had that promoters seem to have had in the past of like the spoiled promoters' kids sort of thing?
To an extent, yeah. I lied for them and said they didn't. To an extent, Kerry was not as bad as you would think when you talk about that stereotype, promoter's kid, etc. Kevin was. Mike wasn't. I really didn't know Chris. David had passed before I had a chance to really know him beyond hello. So, on the two ends, it would be unfair for me to speak about those two. But as far as the three in the middle, Kevin definitely, the other two, no. I mean, they had their moments, but it wasn't like they knew who they were and used it sort of situation.
Now, me personally, when I was growing up, I watched World Class on TV, and one of my favorites was Gino Hernandez. And I just wanted to get some of your memories with him. Did you feel that, do you kind of agree with the experts who say he could have been one of the all-time greats if it weren't for the demons?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No doubt. He was big enough to work even, the big man territory, so to speak, but he wasn't so big he couldn't work in a smaller man's territory, which you did have him in those days. In the ring talent, he had more than he showed a lot of times. Whenever he would get in front of the camera, the charisma was there. He just oozed out of it. He was one of those that made you say, look at me. And no doubt in my mind, Gino could have been one of those that we talk about on the Alzheimer's if he had lived past, 28, 29, whatever it was.
Well, what are your thoughts on the recent passing of Skandar Akbar? Do you have a memory or two about Skandar you want to share?
We didn't always get along all through the years. We really didn't. As time went on, we did. And a lot of that had to do with Akbar was the kind of guy that was going to make sure Akbar had a job. And that means that Akbar was usually the office stooge. And I don't say that in a bad way today. There was a time where I hated the Stooges because that was just my nature. I didn't understand why you had to be a stooge to do your job. Either you were capable or you weren't. And as I got older and I see how life itself works, Akbar took care of Akbar. And having said that, there's no doubt the man was over this direction as far as Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, the places he was known for, the places he was famous for, there's a reason. He was a heat machine when it came time to be Akbar and be that dastardly bastard that brought in Devastation Incorporated to get rid of the Von Erichs, to get rid of Danny Hotch, or get rid of Bill Watts, or whoever it was, the Junkyard Dog, whoever it was at the moment that they had the angle with. He was a heat machine when it came to that. He did his job and did it well.
Now, I was just curious, if you ever saw any of the documentaries on World Class, such as the one that WWE put out, or the one done by Big Vision Video? And if so, what were your thoughts of some of the comments that were made in them?
Are you talking about the videos?
Yes.
No, I haven't seen them.
Okay.
I've heard different bits and pieces and, other people's opinions. So anything I would say would be based on that, which that's not really fair. Because I would have seen some of what was being talked about and might have a completely different opinion. But I heard that a couple of them were pretty fair, pretty accurate. I don't know which one was the title of it, but the one where they showed Kevin up in the auditorium after it had fallen apart and it was getting ready to be demolished. I heard that one was pretty accurate.
Well, that was a really good one. That was Heroes of World Class. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
I heard that one came from the truth.
Well, we
I was going to recommend one recommendations. That would be the one.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that to anyone who, even if they didn't know about World Class, to get the story of what it was like. The one advantage I felt that the WWE's one had is they had the video footage to go along with it.
Right.
Now, we talked just briefly about it a few minutes ago, but can you give some of your memories of the late Dick Murdoch?
He was great. He was difficult to get along with. Some people didn't like him, and I know why. Because Dickie told you what he thought. And even if he was wrong, that was still what he thought. And by God, he was sticking to it. But that's part of the reason that I thought so much of him. Because I've always appreciated that out of a person. I'd rather hear someone tell me what they think and stand by it than have them be all over the road. And that was Murdoch. That was one of those things that kind of, you got what you saw. There was not a whole lot of difference between Dick Murdoch, the worker, and Dick Murdoch, the man.
Now, shortly after that, and starting in 1987, you started working for the WWF on and off for the next few years. How did that come about, you starting to work for them, and what were your thoughts of Vince McMahon?
I don't have anything bad to say about Vince. I tell people the same story every time because it's the truth. I just picked up the phone, called the office, talked to Terry Garvin, and asked for a job. It was just that cut and dry, that plain and simple. And they gave me a look and kept me around for a while. Vince gets a lot of bad rap, and I'm sure he's earned some of it. But how do you become a millionaire in any business if you haven't made somebody mad somewhere? I don't know how it's possible. Because if you're trying to get to that point, there's always going to be somebody else trying to do exactly the same thing, and they're going to cut your throat if they have to. And usually, in my experience, the ones that do the loudest griping are the ones that just didn't quite get there first.
While you were there, you were pretty much used as enhancement talent. And me personally, I've always felt that enhancement talent is often more talented than the wrestlers that they face, because pretty much as an enhancement talent, you have to make the quote-unquote superstars look good. And, you were definitely one of the best at that. That's how you're able to stick around doing it for so long. What are your feelings on that philosophy?
In some cases, you're right. Because the top guys were never going to work towards me. They were never going to worry about what I could or couldn't do, my strengths, my weaknesses. It was getting them over, which is what I stayed to do. I had to be the one that was concerned with what not to do or what to do, how, why, that sort of thing. And if you want to stick around any amount of time, it does become, as you said, a necessity. I don't know if being a better worker is really the word, or the term, but you have to get to a point to where you're definitely adaptable.
Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and try and get this call online again. Hopefully.
All right.
Hello, caller from 405. Can you hear me? Hello, caller. You're on the air? Maybe I just won't go back to them. That happens sometimes. The joys of live radio. Around 1991 was when you left the WWF. What were the circumstances around that? 93, I'm sorry.
93. Yeah. Basically, it just got to where we weren't making a whole lot of money, comparatively speaking, to what we had been. And on a personal level, it's kind of hard to justify to the family when you're just not bringing a whole lot more home than if you were working what was left of the territory at the time. And beyond that, it was just beginning to get time. It was, even though I could always use the paydays and so on, I had just about outlived my usefulness there, so to speak, without some sort of complete and total repackaging and an investment that wasn't going to happen for me, and for obvious reasons. I knew it. It just was time. I mean, that's the only way to put it. It was just time to go.
So was there ever any, I ask this because you're currently working as Doink the Clown, was when he first debuted in the WWF, was there any talk about you doing that?
I did it a little bit on the rare occasion where you needed somebody to fill in a spot type thing, because there were times where he had, 2, 3, 4 Doinks in towns all over the country.
Right.
You didn't quite have all the internet that you have today. You didn't have all the kayfabe sheets. People really didn't know that there was a clown in every one of Vince's towns that night. And so there would be. He was good about keeping it as far as the same guy on TV, whether it was Matt or Apollo or whoever. But when it came time to go to the town and you had Doink on the card, he had a Doink there, one way or another.
Yeah, there was times where there was like 7 or 8 doinks, and it was kind of there was times around then when there was like 7 or 8 doinks that would come out, and yeah, I was just saying, I was just like, seriously.
Well, it was a hot gimmick at the time, beautiful for a short time. And like anything else, if it's what's making a little bit of money in this business, they're gonna ride it until that horse is dead.
Right. Yeah, it definitely. They had a couple good years with the character. Now,
well, it was one of those, once they turned it babyface, they pretty much doomed it. As long as they worked it in the heel, it's like working it as a heel. The clown, I usually kind of an abstract term there, but that was where the money was. Because it shocks me to this day just how many people are actually definitely afraid of clowns. They want to hate a clown. And as long as he was the evil clown, there was money to be made.
yeah, I definitely thought the evil clown was best because you saw him, making the little kids cry, and it was much more effective than him as a babyface.
Exactly. You only got so much. How much can you do with a babyface clown when you got a guy that you package as a killer? It just doesn't work. Whereas you package the clown as a killer, now you got something.
Right. So that's the only time in wrestling history where someone can be evil by pouring a bucket of water on somebody's head.
Yes, thank you. And they knew it. It's just that at that point, business had gotten bad. If it was going to sell some merchandise, if it was going to sell a couple pay-per-view buys, by God, that's what they were going to do. And then worry about the next day.
Now, in the mid-'90s, you started working part-time for WCW for a couple of years. What was the locker room atmosphere like in WCW?
It was a different world there. That place definitely, you hear those stories about how inmates run the asylum. That was that place. Everybody was there for themselves, and they knew the money was being thrown around. They were there to make theirs.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you started there in '95, which was after Hulk Hogan was there.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, that would be about right, because my youngest, if he wasn't born yet, he hit air shortly after I started there, and he was born in '96. So, yeah, that's about right.
And so, that was right after Hulk Hogan got there, and I guess not long before Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and guys like that started showing up. So it was,
right. Yeah, in that time period, yes.
A lot of people say that was sort of the beginning of the end period, so far as the locker room went, at least.
Unfortunately, yeah, because that's when it just got out of hand. Bischoff was a mark for all those guys, and he had a billionaire's checkbook. He didn't care.
That was actually my next question, was your thoughts on Eric Bischoff.
He's a cancer to me. I haven't seen him do a damn thing that was beneficial to the business, worthwhile to the business outside of making money for some people for that period of time. Some of what we complain about today as far as they have to give away everything on TV, there's no continuity to the TV because they have to hotshot everything and push it for now. We can't save it for later. That was Eric Bischoff. That was his mentality. I can pop ratings tonight. That's all I'm concerned with. I'll worry about next week. It showed in their booking before it got, too far along into the Bischoff run there. You can see him almost grasping for straw at times. He was tremendous at that. I always call it the Bischoff moment, for lack of a better term. Where you can get that moment on TV where you went, ooh, that was great. Ooh, that was cool. Ooh, who's next? But he never left himself anything for next week.
It almost seemed, as a fan at that time, that it was almost pointless to have a pay-per-view because all they really cared about was, the Monday night show and beating WWE in the ratings. Whereas, why would if I'm seeing the exact same thing on Monday for free, why would I pay $30, $40 for the pay-per-view?
Which goes right to what I was just saying about he was great at getting that moment right now, getting that idea that you're going to watch just to see what happens next. He never left yourself anything to follow. And you just said it. There was no reason to watch the pay-per-view because he had given it all to you on the Nitro in order to try and beat Vince.
Right. I always think back to the night. I always think back to the night when they brought Ric Flair back and they reformed the Four Horsemen. And that was the night after a pay-per-view where, you know, if you're going to do something, you should have done it on the pay-per-view so people would pay to see that.
Well, that's not something that you thank you. Thank you. Exactly. I mean, there's no other thing to say except you're right. You don't give that one away on free TV. You can bring it back out on the free TV, but you make it obvious that people, you didn't spend your money to see my pay-per-view last night. If you don't pay your money to see my pay-per-view next month or 2 months from now, how often he was running at that time, what else are you going to miss? He never did anything of that nature. And when people catch on, they do. Why spend it when they're already paying whatever it is per month for cable? There's just no need. Bischoff's going to give it to him anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the answer to my next question is you would much rather work for Vince McMahon than Eric Bischoff.
much definitely. Whatever bad can be said about Vince, or whatever true can be said about Vince and egos, et cetera, Vince liked making money, whereas Bischoff liked looking like he was the smartest man in the room.
Right, back to the Eric Bischoff.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, back to Eric Bischoff, yeah, he made a lot of money, but he made a lot of money for Ted Turner, who, I mean, I'm sure a lot of times he didn't even notice, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And if I work for a man that's all about making money, the money's going to find its way to me. Maybe not enough, maybe not as much, but it's going to find its way to me. If I'm working for a guy that he's more into his ego, where does the money stop if there is any? And that was, I caught on to that. I stayed part-time for about 3 years, but I caught on to the fact that I had already hit my glass ceiling I was going to hit there, and it was going to end sooner or later because the egos were going to destroy it.
Yeah, I guess you left in 98 or 99 where it was definitely...
99 sounds about right, yeah.
The 99 was definitely when it was on its way. I know that was when it was on its way downhill.
Oh, yeah, easily by then. Whenever they beat Goldberg, 1, 2, 3, they were done from that point forward.
I was in the arena that night.
No. Well, I couldn't tell you the specific night, but I remember that they had nothing else. He was carrying the company at the time. Whether he was worthwhile in the ring, whether he was handed to all the bad things you could say about him, bottom line was he was carrying the company. He earned what he was making because he was carrying the company. And when those big egos decided, well, it's time to beat him, the company's done. There was nobody left to put that saddle on.
Yeah, and they never really did him any favors with having him chase and then doing all those stupid storylines with all these different people and, having him team up with Dwayne Bruce from the power plant. And they never really did anything to kind of give that back to him.
Well, it's just like the Frankenstein monster or any other monster you've seen in the movies. Once you kill the monster, what have you got left?
Yeah.
Even if it's the babyface monster, what's left? They killed it. There's no bringing it back. The power plant guys weren't going to do anything for him because he knew less than they did, truthfully. So there was nothing there. You might possibly have been able to get something back on it. It would have never been the same had you given him Nash, Hall, somebody like that, over a period of time, and done it as well, done it as correctly as they did it when they were building it the first time. Maybe. And, of course, we're 10 years later, hindsight's 20/20. But that's the only thing that they could have done.
Now, if I remember right, the next thing they did with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash was they went into, which made no sense, going into a feud with Rey Mysterio where they were trying to get his mask off, where, they went from Goldberg to that. And it just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
No. I mean, WCW had some good minds at times that could have done really tremendous business with, especially the talent that they had. And they showed flashes of it with things like the building of Goldberg, Jericho, when he was red hot. There's a couple of things, if I was to sit here and think long enough, that they showed the flashes of someone somewhere had a clue, but those that had the final say, so the final power, just didn't care.
Now, I've always felt that giving a wrestler the booking control is just a recipe for disaster. Because in that time, Nash had the book, Hulk Hogan had the book. What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, nay. It's all about, it's like anything else, it's the individual. You give it to a guy that goes back to the money versus ego. If you give it to a guy that's in the ring that likes to make money, even though he's going to feed his ego something, it's just guaranteed because he protects himself, he's still going to do just that, make money for the most part. You give it to a guy that's more worried about his ego, you set it yourself like you're just creating a recipe for disaster. How do you know? Past records. That's all. That's the only way you can go about it.
Now, at one time in your career also, you worked with the Rock and Roll Express quite a bit. Do you have any memories of working with them?
Oh, those two guys are tremendous. Funky and Hooter. Their night off. You got to have your shoes on. You're going to go. But they're tremendous. There's no way to not understand why they were so over there for a 4 or 5 year period. Once you've been in the ring with them, they were just unbelievable.
Now, do you have any memories of your time in some of the Mexican promotions, like AAA and EMLL?
I hate Mexico. I'll tell that to anybody. It's such a racist place to begin with, and it has nothing to do with wrestling. That's just the country itself. You can make some decent money in Mexico if you didn't stay. If you stayed, they began to think of you as a commodity. They began to think of you as just another piece of the machine, and you were doomed unless you really made them some good money, like a Vampiro or Norman Smiley. And even those guys got the knife between the shoulder blades before it was over. The crowds, they stand out. It's just nuts down there as far as the crowds go. But as far as doing business, I hate it. I hate living in the country. It's a third world country. I'm 150 miles from it. It's like going into another world.
Now, we talked a little bit about Doink earlier. How did you come to start playing the character of Doink the Clown?
It was just one of those, I filled in the spot here or there. Never really thought much about it. And then a couple of places overseas where, can you do it? And, well, I might as well. And if they say something about baby in the big office, we'll worry about it then. Otherwise, let's make some money. And that's how it started.
What are your thoughts on
so much of my career?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So much of my career has been a lot simpler looking back than it might seem for a number of reasons. One of them simply is the business itself, the structure, the way everything was done was simpler then. And another reason is on a personal level, I've always just tried to keep things simpler because I can always get more done. The less complicated, the easier it is to get things done. That's in life, period. And I can honestly say, contracts and all that stuff and all the agreements, and it was a phone call in my day. handshake, that sort of thing. And it just made life easier. And I see these guys today, I tell them I made a phone call from LAX to the New York office. Will you look at me? Will you give me a chance? That was it. I didn't go to any clinic. I didn't go to any tryout. I didn't go to any of that other bullshit that they do today. I didn't eat their diet. I didn't watch their videos. I didn't do any of that. I made a phone call. And went from there. The guys today, it doesn't exist for them, so there's no way for them to grasp it. And it's sad, really. But, like I say, just so much of my career was a phone call, a handshake, and that was it.
Well, what are your thoughts on the recent passing of Luna Vachon? Did you get a chance to know Luna?
Yeah, that one hurt. There was a time period for about 10 years we were pretty close. In and out of New York, Puerto Rico, here. She wrestled here quite a bit. I'm hoping that now that she's passed, that the demons are gone too. I mean, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go any deeper than that. She was a sweetheart to me. That one hurt.
We'll be doing a tribute show on her, so if you want to come on, definitely just let us know, and we can take an interview with you.
Let me know. I mean, she's one of those that, I just want to let further, just beyond the fact that, I don't know. I don't want to go any further than she's a sweetheart to me.
Okay.
Or no one that's what she went.
Do you have a rib or a road story that you could share with our listeners?
A what?
Like a rib or a road story?
For Luna?
No, just a general.
Just a general. Oh,
yeah.
God.
Maybe a little funny rib that happened to you or that you pulled on somebody.
Oh, there were hundreds of them. The ribs don't happen anymore because, first of all, the guys can't take them. And at the same while we're not on the road like we were, 3 to a car, 3 to a room, it's just not there. There was always something. Some of the territories were horrible, padlocks on the bags, flip-flops super glued to the ceiling, rubber snakes for guys who were scared of snakes. I mean, we could go on and on. It was constant. There was always something. We had to relieve the boredom somehow. I mean, it was fun. I mean, I've seen guys get run out of wrestling because Gypsy Joe was scared of snakes. Also, we found out he was scared of snakes. The kid's like first, second match ever is in Kansas City. And the locker room was situated, there was a big wall between the showers and had 2 entrances on either end of a big wall. And the wall didn't go all the way to the ceiling. And me and Jim Eddie had just found out that Joe was definitely afraid of snakes. Well, I can't remember if it was me or Marty that bought the rubber snake. But we say we did because between the two of us, it was one of those we're going to point the finger at each other anyway. And he's in the shower with this kid, and then the kid is greener than a gourd, which we all were one time. And they're in there getting cleaned up, and I'll own up to the snake. I'm going through the snake over the wall. And when it did, somehow or another, it didn't just hit the floor, it hit Joe, and then it hit the floor. He beat the hell out of that poor kid to get out of the shower. It was bad. And I don't think that kid ever set foot in a wrestling building again. That's one of the bad ones that you kind of feel bad about. But 20-something years later, it is funny. It's because of the screaming and the hollering, and everybody was having heart attacks, and oh my God, and if I could find my gun, I'm going to kill, and well, we better get out of here before he finds his gun, and what's going on, we're not going to tell you till tomorrow, that sort of thing. I mean, it was chaos. And 25 years later, it's funnier as funny as can be, but at that moment, that poor guy, he took the brunt of it, and you feel bad on that part. But yeah, that was one of the better ones. But you're just sitting there not really doing much of anything, and all of a sudden it just all breaks loose.
Well, one of our co-hosts, Gary Wolfe, told us a story one time about Owen Hart glued his boots to the floor, so he had to go out there in Japan and wrestle barefoot.
Yeah, guys would do it all the time, or like I say, the flip-flops get super glued to the floor or the ceiling. Everybody's bag would be a big logging chain with a padlock to the heater or to some other pipe in the building. There's no way you're going to get it without a bolt cutter. It got so bad with padlocks in Ron Rich in Kansas City at one time that Bob Brown got to where he was carrying bolt cutters because you never knew when his bag was going to be padlocked or his shoes were going to be padlocked or the ornament on the hood ornament on his car was going to be padlocked. The door handle to his Cadillac was going to be padlocked. He didn't. So he got to where he carried bolt cutters. That's how bad Ron Ritchie got with the padlock. And we were running so many high school gyms. He had an endless supply of padlocks that he, of course, had no combination or key to.
Now, do you have any upcoming bookings or anything you want to plug for our listeners?
Well, I got a show here tonight right outside San Antonio, a little town of Lytle. I'm really not that busy right now. I'm gearing down. I'm done in December. I'm hanging them up. It'll be right at 30 years when I finally do walk in there, the last time and learn. So there's not really a whole lot I'm pushing. I got a few shows, and the only reason I'm waiting until then is I'm just keeping commitments that I've made till then. The body's given out. I went back to college and started teaching at college, and that's working out. And combined with the body falling apart, it's time. There's no reason to stick around and chance even a worse injury. Okay,
so it looks like you got your tie on. On behalf of all the fans, I just want to say thank you for all your years. And is there anything else you want to tell? You want to talk about?
Well, I still got the book out. I wrote it a little over a year ago. Came out a little over a year ago. It's a different look at wrestling because obviously I was never the big star and never the big man in territory and whatever. But I made most of the territories, made the 2 big offices. I've probably been overseas now 30 different trips. And all that's solely off of who I am and what I could do, and I kind of put that in the book, Journal of a Journeyman. It's out there. Amazon, WrestlingRightOnline.com, both. Past that, no, I don't really have anything to plug. It's just I'm enjoying the fact that I've had a good career, had a good life because of the career, and now it's time to move on into a different stage of life.
What's the name of the book? No, we can just plug it on our press releases and things like that.
Yeah, it's Journal of a Journeyman. It's on WrestlingRightOnline.com and it's at Amazon.com, both.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on today, Dusty.
I appreciate it.
No problem. And again, thanks a lot, and best of luck in the last couple months of your career.
All right. Well, thank you.